welcome back to the workshop. My name is Jason. The project I'm about to start will involve a lot of cheating, and I want to teach that to you. The challenge is to take this church, which is very special to my wife and me because it's the church that her grandparents used to go to prior to their passing. The challenge is to take this, blow it up, and put it onto a 16 by 20 inch canvas. I have a way to do this and do it accurately that I'm going to teach you. A lot of artists will use the grid method, and I have the complete and utmost respect for them for doing that. However, I have a simpler and easier way that I'm about to teach you. So it involves taking larger sheets of paper, where basically I have taken the image, blown it up, and we'll put it back together again. And I'm going to teach you how I do that so that you can get the most accurate architectural representation possible in your work and hopefully turn up with something that you're happy with and that you're proud of. So without further ado, let's cut over to the hyperlapse and I will show you how I get this thing started. So as we can see in this picture here, it's almost a gray color. So we're getting now to the place where it's starting to look like what we see in this photo over here. That's great. So according to my mother-in-law, the cream color that we see in this picture is from renovations, and in truth this is probably because the sun's hitting it in a certain way, but the cream color is what they did for these expansion areas off to the right over here and to the left over here. Sorry, to the right over here and to the left over here. That's more of that cream color here that I did originally. So it would have been fine if I had kept it like this, but I actually prefer the stony look that you see in this photograph. So that's what we're going to go with. And she said that's the way she remembers it. And I felt like that was the way I remembered it, which is why I even broached the subject with her. So let's go ahead and start putting this in and see how it looks. Looks good to me. All right, and these little streaks that happen like that, I'm gonna leave them. Because you can see here, it's such an old church, there is a natural patina that has just occurred over the years as this church has existed. So we're gonna leave that there. And this is much, much better, I think, making it look the way it's supposed to look. Alright, so we're going to use a bigger brush now to fill in this spot. Do the detail work, obviously, with a smaller brush. So one more thing I want to show you before I go to hyperlapse. Doing these very, very straight edges. What I do, let me zoom in for this. So I take the brush and I push it down like so, okay? And if you look right there on that edge, you can see I've got this little ridge of paint that I'm pushing. So I'm not all the way up to the edge, but right up to it. And then I put the paint on it. And then I stop right before I get to this low light. And do the same thing right here. Push and pull. And that's how I get these nice crisp edges. Now, one of the drawbacks of that is sometimes I have too much on, and that's why I've got this ridge right here that I need to kind of thin out. And all I gotta do is brush it out as best as I can with a lighter touch. But if I go too far, then it'll get into the sky and it'll warp the shape and it won't look right. So if I have to leave a little bit of a ridge, then I'll leave a little bit of a ridge. But there is one more trick I can do. And that is to take my knife, make sure it's clean. Okay. And just pull that little ridge into the body, like that. Brush it out lightly. It's perfect. It's great. All right, so I think you get the idea. I just have to keep doing this stone work. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to hyperlapse, and I hope you enjoy. Alright, so let's talk about making some trees. I, by no means, claim to have a monopoly on how to make trees. In fact, that's one of my biggest weaknesses. However, I'm still going to show you how I'm going about making these trees for this particular painting. So, what's tricky about this is that they're magnolias. And magnolias have this bunch up pattern that you see here, right? And so that's what makes this particularly difficult to try and shortcut it and cheat. There may be a way to do it that I'm not familiar with, but I think in order to give this painting the quality that it deserves after everything else I've done with it, I'm just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, which is leaf by leaf. So what I've done is I've made a very, very dark green color as my low light. I put that on first, and I've tried every kind of brush I have that I think would be suitable for leaf making. And some of them would work great for different kinds of leaves, but not for magnolias. They have this really waxy oval shape, and because of that, and like I said, they bunch up together at the ends of the twigs upon which they are rooted. And so because of that, it makes it really tricky to do it as a trick. All I'm doing is I'm taking this detail brush, as you see, and I have gone ahead and blotched in some color using a bigger brush, one that has been effective before for doing different breeds of trees. But as you can see, where it's still remaining, like right there and right there, they're too small for magnolias. So I'm just going back and I'm paying particular attention to the edges. And I do know that there are a bunch of painters out there who have techniques to do trees in the distance, and I've even employed some of them in other videos, and you've seen that, particularly with evergreens. It's great. But with a tree like this that's so close and such a prominent feature of the composition, it just didn't feel right about shortcutting it. And I don't think it would look good. And I think it would wreck everything I've done with the church. So I'm taking my time and doing it slowly. And I think I'll be glad of it when I'm finished. Now, if you find things like this are relaxing, well then, hey, this is the painting for you. So I'm going to cut over to Hyperlapse because this is really all I'm doing. It's just putting in leaves, and it's boring, I would imagine, to watch. So I'm going to cut to Hyperlapse, and then when I come back, I'll show you how I do the highlights where they're necessary. So I'm almost done with the low lights here, but I just wanted to show you one other thing that I'm doing with these magnolias. I've got this almost straight black. There's some green in it, and I don't think I mentioned this the last time we spoke, but all this paint is very, very wet and very thin. That allows this detailed brush to get more flow over the tooth of the canvas. But anyway, what I'm doing is I'm taking this blackish color to create some density in here and just putting it in behind some of these areas, because there are branches and leaves and leaf clusters behind these ones in the foreground. So these I'm not being as meticulous with. Again, it's just trying to create some density and some depth. But by making it much darker in shadow, and putting it in shadow rather, I think it gives the tree a nice body that it would not have had otherwise. So I'm almost finished with this part. I just wanted you to see what I'm doing. So again, just areas where I think it needs a little bit more. But I've left this pile right here a bit lighter deliberately when I made this batch of color. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in some white. Pull that out and add some white to that. And on these magnolias, there are actually these yellowish, flowery looking things. They may very well be flowers or the beginnings of flowers, I don't know. The picture is too pixelated, but I do know that magnolias bloom to these beautiful white flowers, but I don't see any on this particular tree. So either it's summer or right before spring is my guess in this picture. But either way, we're gonna add some yellow highlights as well, just to make it really pop and sing. I do want it very, very wet, so I'm going to get a lot of thinner on this brush, because thin paint goes on to thick paint much easier. I'm going to actually let some of this come in there. I think we're ready, so I'll just start randomly placing this yellow. I'm going to put it towards the tips, because that's typically where the flowers blossom. And this will just add one more little detail that just make it more interesting to look at and beautiful, I hope. As you can see, all I'm doing is just touching the bristles to the canvas and letting the bristles do their thing. I might pull it just a touch to get the color off. I think that looks very nice. And so I'm not going to bore you to death by showing you every single brush stroke that I do here, but I did want to show you the highlights on the leaves themselves really quickly. Just tap it onto some of these leaves that are out here on the periphery, but they might be catching some sun directly. Just wanted to show you how I did that. And again, the ones that are very prominent, like these ones that are just in front of the church, those are the ones I want to really pay attention to. Alright, so I'm going to cut back to hyperlapse. See if I can't finish this tree and then work on the one on the right.